Welcome back to Dion Talk. I talk often about reaching financial freedom by investing in buy and hold real estate, which means I almost always deal with tenants, toilets, and termites. People call it passive income because the IRS calls it that. Acquiring it is definitely not passive. It was life consuming, educating myself, hunting for the deals, negotiating for the deals, buying the deals, getting the deals rent ready, getting to know the tenants. All of that took a lot of time. Doesn't take as much time to own it, but it's not quite iron lung passive income that people want. So today I have my friend Dave, who is retired, has passive income, used to own some rentals. We might talk about that. Doesn't currently own rentals, right?
None right now.
Okay. But has passive income. So the purpose of this video is to help the average individual understand that you can reach financial freedom, make work completely optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. That's what I did. I don't think you started investing in notes until
The pandemic, actually.
about 5 years then.
5 years, 2020. Yeah.
So, how do you create passive income without having to deal with people issues of owning rentals?
Wow, Dion, that's a great question. I the I was able to start investing in 2020 in real estate notes. I knew a real estate investor, a local investor in my area, and he reached out to see if I had money to loan out, and I did. And so I started loaning money out, and in like 12 months I made over 100 grand, and I still had my job at the time, so it was like, this is sort of cool. And so I took that money and kept reinvesting it, buying more and more real estate notes.
So, real estate notes is like you are the mortgage owner.
Yeah, I'm like the bank.
Okay, so you're like the
I-
bank. You own the note, which is backed by properties, usually.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's um like 90% of my, well, maybe 95% of my notes are backed by a first position lien against the property.
Okay. Now, the question for me would be, and first, can we close that door? Somebody left it open, and we're going to get car noise through the whole thing. My question is going to be this one here. How do you find the notes? What would make you determine a note is good, like worth buying or not?
Okay. So this will take a little, this is where you have to actually do your due diligence really to see the value of the note. But I use a website. It's called Paper Stack. I'll spell it out for you. PAPERSTAC, paperstack.com. And they already have done a lot of the work for you, and there's a system in place that you could go to that website. You could look at notes that are in first position, second position, or even defaulted notes, and you could start searching. Do you want a note in a first uh, position, a second position, even a defaulted note? You could even buy a note that's in default right now. The advantage of like what I use with PaperStack is that you could look up mortgages for a house or vacant land. This is a prime example right here, Dion, where you're going, and you could literally just click on the things that you want all the way through right in here. You want a performing note. I sort of leave that blank, but you could choose, even if you want a deed of trust, a mortgage, or a contract for deed, and each of them have different meanings. I think that's too much for this conversation, but you could easily just search that out and figure out which one it is. So when you start looking at a note, now I'm just going to use this one I can talk on this one,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So like this one here, he has, okay, so you jumped the gun a little bit on me, but that's all right. You might have to hit that X over there. So like this one here, the unpaid principal and balance is 80,700, and he wants 80,000 or best offer. So he's pretty close to, like, there's not a lot of room in between that where you'd, like, if you had to flip it right away, you might not be as well protected, or you might have, the gap is not that great of a deal. But so he's not, to me, he doesn't seem very flexible. with it being within $700, right? So look at the next one here, 117 first position. For 100 grand, that's a little bit better. You got a little bit more gap there. You know, if something went sideways on you, you could get it for 100, maybe sell it for 110 or 105. So you have a little bit more room in there. So let's go ahead and click on one of these, Dion, and just sort of see, let's get into the more meat of it.
So I wanted to bring up the website so people could see how easy it was.
Yeah.
I've never been to the website before. I pulled it up. I didn't have to create an account. I could just look at what was there. What I want to do now, Dave, is I actually want to go through some of your notes.
Ah, okay.
Let's talk real world example because it's a website. We might look at it and go, oh, that sounds good. It looks good. But what actually happens? So recently, we were at the local Tacoma FI meetup, and I said, "Hey, in the near future, let's get together. Come on over. We'll make a video, and we'll talk about note buying," which led to
Ah, so in my research, as I was preparing for this video right now, um, I actually came across a good deal that I actually bought. I did the research and I bought, and I wasn't even in the really ready to buy a note at the particular time. It's just that Dion said, let's put something together. Let's get a video out on buying real estate notes. And this one came across, and I got real numbers that I'll share with everybody right here, right? So it's a vacant piece of land in Rosebud, Texas. It's 5 acres. The the unpaid principal, the land originally sold for $80,000, seller financed. And so then the seller was wanting to sell the land or sell the note, excuse me. He was selling the note. And so he put it out on the market for about $63,000, this note. The unpaid principal at the time, or which was now last month, the unpaid principal was $76,000. So I'm liking that spread.
what that means is you're buying a note for 63. The gap between what it's actually worth is 76.
There you go.
That's the remaining value. So if the owner of the property decided to pay you off and say, "Hey, I don't want to make any more payments in the future. You own the note. I'm just paying it off." To cancel the note, you have to actually get $76,000. So if next month that owner said, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore," you make, what is that, $13,000?
Right.
You hope that it doesn't happen because what happens if they pay all of the payments and you gain the interest from owning the note?
Well, what happens is you do get paid off. You could get paid off early, like I've experienced with other real estate notes where you get paid off early. Then you need to go back to work and say, what do you want to do with this money? And I know that there's a term called the rich get richer is because they use their money to reinvest. And that's what I did when I had a note payoff back in January. But back to
How much did they pay off in January?
in January, they paid off $135,000.
So you basically woke up in the morning and there was $135,000 in your account you didn't have the day before.
Yes. So
Okay.
that's sort of exciting on one hand.
Right, but it's a great position to be in where you have $135,000 in your bank you weren't counting on and you don't want it. You
That
think,
is
I got to get rid of this.
that is a funny way to say it. Roughly, what I really liked about that particular note was I was getting paid about 1,400 a month on that particular note that I worked on over a year ago, and I just get the money every month. So I immediately looked at, okay, I need to put this money back to work. So I did, and through that process, one of the pieces I bought was this Rosebud property in Rosebud, Texas.
And so how much would you make if they paid all the payments? I'm sorry if I was missing and they paid all the interest.
Oh, on the Rosebud property?
On this property
Yeah.
here.
So I'll get to that point. Let me sort of give the step by step there, right? So what I liked about this particular note was not only the gap between the purchase price or the list price of the sale and the unpaid principal of 76,000. On the website, you can actually make an offer to the seller. And he initially listed the property or the note for 63,000. I offered 57,000. He came back and countered at 59,000. And so I sort of liked the the camaraderie we're having at the get-go. So I went and agreed to his purchase price of $59,000. But there's a little bit more to it. We're going to get right into it right now. The neat thing about this property, Dion, is that the buyer, the land buyer, is paying $1,059 a month on his real estate note. The real estate note has 109 months of payments left. So I quickly calculated 1,059 times 109, and I said, what's the big picture look like? And in 9 years, well, right around 9 years, my total payoff will be $115,000 for 431. 115 grand in 9 years. I get $1,000 a month every month for the next 109 months.
So if they don't pay you off early and they just make the monthly payments, you're making 115,000. If they pay
Yeah.
you off early, you paid 59. We'll talk about the service fees that it costs to buy a
Oh,
note.
yeah,
It's
we
like when
should.
we buy a real estate, when you buy a rental, you're going to pay for an appraisal, an inspection. You're going to pay title and escrow fees. You're going to pay agents. You're probably going to pay about 8% of your purchase. And while people say the seller pays that, the buyer's the one that's bringing the money to the table. So the seller
Mhm.
paying it means that's included in your cost. What does it cost to buy a note?
Okay. Right at that point about buying a note, the other thing that I did, I should just share that with everyone. The other part that I did was, what is the value of that land? What is other pieces of land valued in that particular area? Number one, I look at listings, just sort of get an idea on what properties are selling for in the area. And if I find that the properties that are selling are way less than this unpaid principal, I'm not going to buy the proper or buy the note because I'd already be upside down just starting. So this one was the other way around. I found other properties for sale in the 80s and $90,000 range, 5 acres close to a nice place in Texas. So this particular note, the fees with paper stack, escrow and paper stack totaled about $1,200 for, there was no appraisal, there was no inspection. Uh, it's all handled through a third party. Paper stack becomes your third party once you and the seller have an agreement. And then what happens is this paper stack gives you a step-by-step process that you follow to get from where you are all the way to closing. And it's really a nice feature because it says, buyer, do this. And I can't like fill in all the buyer pieces ahead of time, like skip all the number things. It's sort of like the seller, you do this. As soon as the seller's done, then I get to do my next step. And it just sort of works back and forth until all the way, like wiring instructions, um, documents get transferred back and forth, documents get recorded, and all of a sudden at the very end it just says, okay, you've got your property, or I got the real estate note. And this note, Dion, closed about 2 weeks. Should I say the day?
Well, today, yeah, because the video is going to be up forever. Today's what, the
Oh,
11th of June when we're making the
June
video.
11th, and I closed on this note around May 25th, and my first payment is coming on June 15th. So within 30 days of buying this note, I already get my first payment in. So I'm pretty pumped about that because to me, when you buy a rental property, you could be 60, 90 days out and you
Or
could,
3 months if you invest out of
well,
state like Frank.
oh,
But uh,
no.
not to pick on Frank.
Yeah,
My
let's
favorite thing, second favorite thing.
Frank, come
I
on.
did. You would met him too.
Yeah, yeah.
Wayne has a question here. How would you determine how big of a gap would be worth going for when looking at one of these notes?
Okay, I don't really have like a scientific method. It's just more of a gut thing for me. But if you can try to shoot because you want at least a 15% return. So you want to make sure that it's covered under that because you would just, everyone has their own like risk factor on what they want to do and pursue. So for me, my risk maybe isn't as high, so I could get it. I'm happy maybe with a 10 to $15,000 gap between the unpaid principal and then the purchase of the note.
Okay, so this is an example of the highest form of learning is teaching. And this is where, Dave, we might actually make you a better investor.
Oh, okay.
if you're open-minded. So the start to the answer was, I don't have a scientific method, followed by, I want to run a 15% return. Well, you need to learn how to calculate your return and which metric are you using? Is it a 15% return
Mm,
if they make all the payments? Is it a 15% return if you close and get the asset? Is it a 15% return if the gap between what you're buying and what it's worth is calculated? Then you said, I also have a floor where I want to make ten to $15,000 because of the time, energy, and effort involved in buying this. I want to make sure it's worth my time. So you have
right.
two metrics to go with.
Mhm.
And if you look at note buying in the future and you're thinking, okay, I'm buying this, how would I explain this to somebody if I was teaching them how to do it? You will refine your own method. Literally,
Right.
people, when I talk, they say, oh, you have so many systems for buying your real estate. It's like, no, I was winging it for 3 or 4 years until I thought, oh, how would I teach this to somebody? And then all of a sudden I had systems.
Ah, yeah. So I would go with like my example from Rosebud, Texas. The list price was 63,000. I believe I did a calculation at 15% to get 15% where then I offered well, wait a minute. I went 15% plus I added $1,000 for fees that I have to pay to paper stack. And my initial offer was 57,000 and a few $100s. And the seller came back and said he offered 59,000 and I agreed with that because it's maybe not a whole 15%, but it was definitely less than his list price of 63,000.
Okay. Now let's talk about the importance of how an asset is backed.
Okay.
You said 90% backed by property. You have one that's not. How's that going? Because it's not always puppies and kittens. Sometimes we learn along the way.
I thought it was apples and oranges, but anyway, no. I own 9 real estate notes right now, and I took a venture, and they were all backed by first position notes or a deed of trust against properties. I took a chance and I tried something new and just um, invested $10,000 with a company out of Mississippi. I think I can say that, right? And so the I invested the money in March. The payments were supposed to be April, May, June. We're now at June 15th, going to be pretty quick. And that particular investor has ghosted me 100%, has not paid me anything on it on this particular note. And it had a personal guarantee. This was a company. It had a personal guarantee. It was my first time working with the guy, and I had studied his stuff online, and I looked up his name to any searches to see if I could see anything, bad written about this person, and I couldn't. So after 90 days of, just waiting and having a gut check, I said, okay, I'm going to go do it. So
And so I'm going to sound like the ultimate dad here. And what did we learn?
what did we learn? Okay, what did we learn? Don't invest on a personal signature into a company or an LLC. Have it where I'm too, that's what he would call it. I'm very protective of my money and I just don't need to risk it like I did with this last 10,000. It's much better to secure it against a property, first position. If you're a little bit more daring, go in second position. And if you're really more daring, you can even buy defaulted notes at the paper stack website where your return will be greater, but you will be doing more work because most likely you will have to foreclose on that and get an attorney involved on that particular if it's a defaulted note.
So
That
here's one of the most fascinating things about notes and JMFS. You've never heard of notes before. It sounds interesting, sounds a bit out of your experience for now, but very interesting. There's entire communities of note buyers. They have conventions like we have the one rental at a time event in Las Vegas. There's note conventions. And you can do the same thing. Find the groups, find the investors, find the person doing what you're looking for. The couple of drawbacks to notes for me that have made me go, okay, I'm not a note investor, I'm a real estate investor, is I like levered appreciation. Is that happening with note buying?
well, Dion,
Can you borrow money to buy notes?
ooh, borrow money to buy notes. I've never done that since I've just used my own money and I kept reinvesting the money, reinvesting. One of the, well, I say it's a disadvantage in notes is that there is no appreciation. over the course of time.
Unless you foreclose on the asset that backs it, that
Well,
would be nice. So the second benefit that real estate has that I find notes don't is with mortgages, I have what's called levered depreciation. I don't think notes even have regular depreciation.
no, there's no
Okay.
depreciation in a note. There's no appreciation in a note. The advantage of a note, I would say, is that they're easy to buy. They close quickly. You get monthly cash flow pretty near immediately. You don't get the phone calls of any kind that
There's definitely a pro and con list, and there's a huge pro list. There is a reason why people choose to invest in notes. And I think what the lesson here from you buy an asset that's backed with real estate and you're in first position means if you foreclose, there's nobody between you and the property. It's
no,
yours.
it's yours.
Right. If you're in second position, it means the bank is there, you get what's left over. There was a few steps in the risk tolerance increasing before you get to I would back it with a personal guarantee in a business that you can't really verify and you don't really get the assets from. So luckily, the way Dave did it though is you own several notes. You're about 5 years in, and you thought, yeah, 10 grand, that's not life altering money. I'll throw it at this and I'll try, and you learn and you go, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not doing that again.
Correct.
Same thing with real estate. If you have a massive portfolio and you buy a property using an appreciation play and you think, yeah, that's just going to be worth more money in the future, that's a solid deal. If you have a massive portfolio and it's a very small amount of your cash flow that's impacted, and if you have to write a check to pay it off, it isn't a big loss. But if you start with that strategy, if you start with the really risky notes, I think it would blow up in your face.
Yeah, don't do it. It's you can buy notes for $5,000 on paper stack. You can put in the parameters. What do you want to buy a note? I mean, up to 100,000, whatever it is. You got quite a range to buy a real estate note, and maybe you're sitting on some money, and I'll just put 10 or 20,000 against something and see what happens. Or you could even and you could look at how the timeline is. Do you want a 24-month note? Give that a shot. The disadvantage. Oh, wait a minute. My property in Rosebud, Texas. I looked at it. The worst case scenario is I'd have to foreclose, and then I would own 5 acres in Texas. You know,
Right.
so
That's the thing is what is it backed by? Are you willing to go through the work to get it? And but once you own it, you own it. So if it's worth more than the amount of money you put into it, you said you looked other 5 acre parcels in the area close just similar to this one were for 80 or 90 and you were putting 59,000 into it. That's not a bad deal.
right, yeah, because worst case scenario is I could easily again sell it for 70 or 80,000, and I don't get the monthly long term. I'm looking for monthly cash flow, so I won't get that long term monthly payment, but at least my investment is protected. And if I had to foreclose right away, I'd make maybe 10 grand or something like that on it.
So this could be an avenue that you approach if you're in a situation like mine where you acquire some rentals, you get your portfolio to the right size, and then the money keeps piling up. Right? I don't really want more rentals, but I wouldn't mind some more cash flow and a place to put my money that's doing more than what it would do sitting in a savings account. So, Dave, I guarantee people are going to have questions. If they want to get a hold of you, how can they find you?
I think the best way to find me is through my email address, and I can just tell it
Yep, and
right now.
I'll pin your email, Dave, as a comment in the comments after the live stream.
Yeah, okay. So it's Dave, Dave, 532 at Comcast.net. It's Dave 532 at Comcast.net. I'll work with you. I'll help you. Ask me questions. If I don't know, I'll flat out tell you I don't know, or I'll do research on it to get you an answer, because there are people that could have 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 just sitting in the bank getting whatever it is, 2 or 3% or 1%. And if you're not sure, like you don't really want to take half of it and buy a 24-month note, because you're still making your monthly cash flow. So you're not going to ever be like, oh my gosh, I have no money left. You can protect your nest egg. You can do what you want with it, but don't just have it letting sit there in the bank and just sort of having it sort of spinning its wheels, not doing nothing. And you can do calculations that get 15% return.
Here's a question from Wayne. Thank you, Chester, for putting that in the comments. And also, Curtis is in the chat. He says, "Race car Dave."
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, we
Race
got
car.
the
Yeah.
address
Yeah.
the nickname corrected because we were in Vegas and we were talking to my brother Dale, who's the creative one in the family. talking about racing your Corvette, going to like Willow Springs, where I grew up, and you were talking about different tracks you want to go to and try out.
Yeah.
And my brother says, "Oh, so you're racist, Dave."
Oh my gosh, I had to correct Dale right
That
away, and
nickname almost
it,
stuck,
and
but race car Dave.
it ended up being Racer Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway,
Wayne asks, what about the length of the notes? What kind of control do you have there? Is it listed on the website? Is it negotiable?
the length of the note is not negotiable because the original seller of the property and the buyer, they have a contract that doesn't change just because the contract was sold to somebody else. So they still have to follow that. But you could, it's on the website, how many payments are left. I like this one out of Rosebud because it had 109 months of payments, and the monthly payment was $1,059. So you take 1,059 times 109 months. I was like, yeah, I was in for that. But the so you can't change that initial contract, but you can look at notes to determine how long you want to carry a note for, because it's all listed on the PaperStack website that tells you how many months of a note are left. So that's an option for you to consider.
Cool. So I have a favor to ask everybody in the comments. Let me know. Would you like to see Dave come back for a Tuesday live stream where you hang out for the full 2 hours and answer questions? And we go into notes. We'll tear into that used to own rental story that is one of the ones that makes people like me not want to own rentals and not retire early on them. And I have to do my research and find out that's not what happens to everybody.
No, you've really opened my eyes to that as I've been attending the Tacoma FI meetings, and actually I'm in the learning process of wanting to get back into owning real estates, Dion. And my major thought is that appreciation. I'm missing appreciation right now. I'm missing depreciation right now. I can't really. The only way I could get cash right now is if I sold my note. I can't really borrow against a note, at least for me, that I wouldn't. And so, and then also don't forget the tax advantages. I believe your tax advantages on your real estate is way more than what my advantages are.
So with every negative that Dave threw up there, I will end with this. Dave is retired, doesn't have every day is Saturday, every night is Friday night, can take his cars and race on the tracks, take your bikes and race on the tracks. Putting money to work was the goal. Optimizing it is great,
Yes.
but finding ways to put the money to work, I don't care what the asset is. Pick it, master it like you did since the pandemic, and you might have a life that everybody else wishes they could. Ciao.
Peace.
And we're off.
Okay.
Nice and fun, huh?
Yeah.
Tons of people said yes, of